Who is the strongest warrior in Universe 7? That is a question within the hearts and minds of Dragon Ball fans everywhere right now. And I, Taf108 of the Supreme Duel channel, I'm going to answer that question for you. So, if you're new here, I'll basically break down how things usually work, which is the fact that I'll have scans and links to translations used in this video down in the description box down below. So if you're curious about any of the things that I'm citing, you can simply check there and you'll find my source, because points without evidence are really just pointless. Next, I know that this film is technically sort of its own thing. I'll have the statement from the director up on the screen, where basically this film is made as a direct sequel to the Broly movie and does not take into account the manga, which is why Moro and Granola are not mentioned within the film itself. But even that fact being known, we all know that the manga is eventually going to adapt Dragon Ball Superhero in some fashion. And there's also a 2-year gap between the current events of the manga and the film, so there's no reason to think that the film can't just take place later in the timeline, even though it only functions writing-wise as a sequel to the Broly film. As such, for the purposes of this video, in order to save us a lot of headache, we're not going to be considering the fact that, the manga and anime are technically different canons. Instead, we will only be focusing on the manga canon, and we will just consider the Dragon Ball Super Broly movie and Dragon Ball Superhero to the manga. That being said, the format of this video is going to be a little different than what I usually do, but it'll be fairly straightforward and simple. I'm going to be discussing who I think the strongest warrior is in Universe 7 by breaking down the 4 main contenders and going over the pros, which are the strongest arguments for them, and the cons, which are the strongest arguments against them. Now, you'll notice that I said 4 and not 6. I will not really be focusing on Goku and Vegeta in this video, and will instead periodically mention them when they're relevant. That being said, allow me to get on with it and stop wasting your time. This is about the 4th time I think I've recorded this, and I've had a lot of issues with it, so I want to go through this cleanly and hopefully efficiently. Enjoy! Now we're going to start with who I believe is probably the weakest contender, which you guys probably aren't going to agree with, but I'll try to defend my point as best I can. Black Frieza. Now, Frieza's feats speak for themselves. He one-shotted Goku and Vegeta, even though they had just mastered their transformations, Ultra Ego, and True Ultra Instinct. He one-shotted Gas, who had wished to become the strongest in the universe. So beating the strongest guy in the universe is a really good way to put yourself in the position to become the strongest in that universe. Not to mention that the title of the chapter is about the strongest in the universe actually being revealed. So all of this is a very strong point in Frieza's favor. You can also consider the fact that Frieza has insane potential, as he trained for 10 years in order to achieve this Black Frieza form. And there's a pretty good video done by Seth the Programmer talking about the different ways in which you can interpret Frieza's potential in order to discern how high of a power boost he got, including the idea that he trained in order to fight fusion level beings like Gogeta and Vegito. And it's easy to see why this potential sticks out to so many fans, considering the fact that Frieza went from being star level in the Namek Saga to being universe level in just 4 months by achieving his golden form, which is an insane amount of growth, especially if you go with the idea that the Dragon Ball cosmology is infinite. That's literally an infinite increase in a finite amount of time. But time is also the biggest downside for Frieza. The fact that his feats all take place 2 years before the events of the current film are a huge mark against him. Now, we do know, thanks to a line in Superhero that I'm going to touch on later, that he is alive during the events of the film. And also I'm going to be using scans from a cam scene in order to have the sub dialogue on there, so I apologize for that in advance. But because of the fact that Frieza is alive, we can say that he hasn't been killed, so it's possible he's gotten even stronger. But at the moment I can only scale him based off of what he's done in the manga. And being 2 years behind the development of everyone else, it's going to be hard to maintain that top spot. Moving on, we get to everyone's favorite contender for the spot of strongest in the universe, Beast Gohan. Now, Gohan is really going to be kind of my excuse to scale Dragon Ball Superhero in this film, as I'm basically going to reveal the strength of pretty much every notable character. So bear with me if you haven't seen it. So Gamma 1 and 2 are stated numerous times on the official website for the film, as well as various magazines, which again you can find in the description box down below, to be the strongest artificial humans. This puts them over the likes of artificial human number 17, who, depending on who you ask, is blue tier. In the manga, it's a little bit more vague, but you can definitely argue, especially since Goku considers 17 to be about on their level, that he's at least around a god level being. So the fact that they're stronger than him is no small feat. They're also stated by Piccolo to be on par with Goku and Vegeta. Now, this will be disproven by the film itself, considering the fact that Orange Piccolo, Piccolo's second transformation in the film, casually one-shots Gamma 2, and he is stated by Akira Toriyama himself to be on par with Goku and Co. The two statements cannot simultaneously be correct, so while they are on a similar level, it's more likely that they are weaker than Goku and Vegeta because Piccolo is on par with them. Which brings us to our next point of what forms is Piccolo on par with. Now, you can interpret this two ways, but the only real ways to interpret it are either blue or their Ultra form. And which it is really pertains to the next point, because Piccolo is weaker than Cell Max. He is relative to him, but he is weaker than Cell Max. And Cell Max lost to Gohan. Now, Gohan did kill him by hitting a weak spot. However, he still tanked his punches with no difficulty. And he also completely obliterated his charged Ki Blast. So the fact that they both charged attacks should really cancel out the fact that Gohan hit him with a weak spot, because his strongest Ki attack did nothing to prevent the Makan Kosopo from beaming directly into his skull. So if Gohan is stronger than Orange Piccolo, who is on par with Goku, of course, he could be stronger than Goku and still be weaker than Frieza, since Frieza is obviously stronger than Goku since he one-shotted him at least 2 years ago. However, there are some scans which state that the fight with Cell Max is the strongest battle in history. The sheer fact that Gohan won the strongest battle in history is a very easy way for him to take the strongest position. Mutually, you have a statement from Toriyama which says that Gohan is the strongest, or so it's said. Now, while these are all very good points in Gohan's favor, they're also a bit of a double-edged sword, because the or it's said part can be interpreted to mean how Gohan is perceived rather than how he is. And this is mentioned a couple of times throughout the film, that the narrative is Piccolo stresses how Gohan could be the strongest, but he isn't. Now, you could argue that Beast Gohan is the fulfillment of Piccolo's ideals, but this still leaves it open that he is not the strongest. And we also have to consider the fact that Gohan in the film hasn't been training, and he's so weak that he's forgotten the basics he learned in the Saiyajin Saga, and even Pan has better Ki sensory abilities than he does. And the dub even implies he can't handle the weights of the Cell Saga, which luckily is not said in the sub. So him just getting angry and then jumping to being more powerful than Goku and Vegeta is a hard pill for a lot of people to swallow. The greatest in the universe argument from the scan about his fight being the best is a lot stronger. However, you have to consider the fact that people like Krillin and 18 were relevant in that fight and were able to react to and push back Cell Max. Even Gotenks' failed fusion, which would be weaker than ordinary base Gotenks, was able to damage Cell's weak spot, which isn't especially vulnerable because Piccolo in his ultimate form, which was relative to Gamma 1 and 2, was unable to damage it with a charged Ki attack. So there are a lot of sort of anti-feats going on here around Cell Max. But if you use the most positive possible interpretation of these scans, Gohan comes out looking very well. However, there is another Saiyajin prodigy in this film, and that'd be Broly. Now, I usually don't have a lot of good things to say about Broly, however, I do like Super Broly, so I'll try to be pretty fair in this assessment. He's blatantly called the strongest man in magazines hyping up the film, which can only be interpreted one way. At the very least, he'd be the strongest mortal based off of this statement, which would obviously put him above Gohan. Goku and Vegeta are also intimidated by Broly throughout this film. Now, you can argue that, they're just afraid of him losing control, but Goku puts him on the same level as Jiren and the Hakaishin, which is definitely no small thing. And he's even using Broly as a motivator in order to try to get Vegeta to train, because they have to worry about strong guys like him. So again, it definitely paints the idea that Broly is some kind of beast even now. And to compound the fact that Broly is considered a beast by the narrative, Akira Toriyama went out of his way to state that Cell Max, if he had been completed, would be someone that not even Broly could defeat. The fact that he specifies not even Broly would obviously put Broly on a pedestal when compared to other characters, and put him on the same level as Gohan, who won the strongest battle in history, since they'd both be stronger than Cell Max in his current state. The interesting thing about this is that Cell Max isn't even, weakened. It's not like he's imperfect or something, despite his appearance. He just doesn't have any intelligence because his mind isn't being controlled. So it makes you wonder what real difference that would make in terms of battle power. I only can assume he'd just have greater ki control, and maybe because of that he'd be able to target Broly more effectively, whereas now he's just kind of mindless, and maybe that's why weaker characters can affect him, and as a result he just gets steamrolled by Broly. But either way, all these statements combined have Broly as the strongest man who cannot be beaten by the film's antagonist in his current state, and is someone that the primary antagonists are worried about fighting. Now, there are some downsides to Broly being the strongest in the universe. One of the big ones is the fact that he is long surpassed in the manga. He was surpassed by Moro, who also surpassed Jiren, as he was stated to be the toughest opponent Goku had ever faced. Now, this is interesting because in the film itself, Jiren is mentioned in passing, and he's sort of, again, put on a pedestal as someone they need to strive to be like. However, it's not like they say that they're weaker than Jiren, they just say that he wasn't that much stronger than them throughout the tournament, which doesn't make a lot of sense in the anime. It's a little bit easier to follow in the manga, where you can argue that Ultra Instinct and Evolution aren't that big of a jump from Super Saiyan Blue. But in the anime, where they arguably get thousands of times stronger, the idea that that could be a bit is a little insane. That's not the point of this video, though, so I don't want to dwell on it. But the point is that Broly was surpassed at that point in the story, and even if you say he got stronger in the Granola arc, he was surpassed at the start of that arc by Goku and Vegeta, as it's stated by Whis, when the idea of the strongest in the universe popping up is mentioned by the Oracle Fish, that he can't think of anyone in the universe stronger than Goku and Vegeta. He knows all about Broly, so that means that even Evolution Vegeta at that point is more powerful than Broly. By that same token, he's also surpassed by Gas and Granola, who wish to be the strongest in the universe, and Broly is, lo and behold, a part of that universe. But of course, this is where the time factor comes into Broly's favor, because this movie takes place 2 entire years after the Granola arc. That is enough time for Broly to bridge the gap Goku and Vegeta created and become the strongest man, as stated in the magazine. So Broly is coming out of this looking very good. However, you can mention the fact that Broly is being hidden from Frieza, which could imply that Black Frieza could defeat Broly, which, if you go by the current standings of the manga, is very obvious. Black Frieza is the strongest character as far as the manga is concerned. However, with a 2-year difference, it's possible that Broly could be able to protect himself from Frieza. So you could also just argue that they're protecting him because Broly is stupid. He's learning how to fight, but he doesn't know how. Black Frieza could probably pretty easily take his base form before he could jump to his Wrathful or Super Saiyan states. He's also a lot smarter than Broly, so he could just, use Chi-Lai to try to force him back into the army. So just removing Broly from those kinds of situations where Frieza could potentially do something underhanded without Goku and Vegeta being around makes a lot of sense. However, if you consider this to be a purely strength point, this is another argument to kind of propel Frieza back to the top. And now we get to the big man himself, Beerus. Now, Beerus is sort of a moving goalpost in the series, where Goku and Vegeta seem to get a lot stronger in the manga, yet they can never catch up to him. And this is something that a lot of people find irritating, especially when you consider the anime, where it's pretty heavily implied that they surpassed him during the Tournament of Power. However, in the manga, this is not the case. And the fact that they are continually playing catch-up to him is a major theme within the manga. And you could even say this theme applies to Frieza as well, because Akira Toriyama stated in an interview that it's probably outdated, but I think it has an interesting statement where he says that Frieza cannot defeat Beerus no matter what he does, which would obviously include training. So it's possible Toriyama considered Black Frieza even all the way back then, and even then he knew that Black Frieza would not be powerful enough to beat Beerus. Now, this obviously could have changed, but it's an interesting point, so I kind of wanted to bring it up. I wouldn't exactly call that a pro or con, just a little extra information for you guys. Another good point in Beerus' favor is the fact that Goku and Vegeta have yet to have their rematch with him. It's stated that the Oracle of His prophecy for Beerus to have a good fight has yet to come true, and as a result, Goku and Vegeta are still constantly getting stronger, and they're not at the point yet where they've given Beerus that rematch, which means that Beerus is likely to remain undefeated until that rematch can occur. That's a pretty good point in his favor. Goku is also wrong about Broly being as strong as him, considering the fact that Goku has surpassed Broly and still isn't as strong as Beerus. So you can't try to downplay him to early Broly tier, especially since Beerus himself was also going to defeat Moro, and he was also an exemption from the strongest in the universe wish, because of the fact that he is a god, and the Dragon Balls cannot make you stronger than a god. Now, of course, this isn't a foolproof argument, because the wish did make Granola stronger than Kami, Kaioshin, and then it ultimately comes down to the fact that Beerus is also mostly featless, other than the fact that he was going to defeat Moro. And he was also worried by Broly, but again, Beerus is probably just worried about the fact that Broly could go crazy and destroy his planet, less so than his strength. And the fact that Beerus stands at the top is also a pretty good point in the favor of Goku and Vegeta, who I can't dedicate a section to, because they are pretty much sort of painted as outclassed at this point. But again, they're the main characters, so obviously they're going to surpass all these characters at one point. It's just likely that in the current landscape of Dragon Ball, they have yet to do so. And I know that there is a video, again to mention Seth, about Black Frieza versus Gohan. I didn't watch it just because I wanted to go into this with my own thoughts. So if he raised any interesting points, feel free to bring them up in the comment section down below. I'm sure whatever he did was very interesting. It's just I wanted to do it on my own merit, without any outside influence. I also haven't looked at any Instagram posts about the fight or Reddit. I just wanted to purely come up with my own ideas and points based off of the manga, the movie, which I watched subbed and dubbed, and of course the various magazines that covered the matchup. That being said, feel free to drop a comment now. Like the video if you enjoyed. I'm very curious to hear your thoughts. Is there a point you thought I missed? A point you thought was fairly strong? Did I change your mind? If you want to debunk me, feel free to do so in the comment section. If there is any strong enough points that go against the evidence I presented, I'll be more than happy to make a follow-up video about you guys' comments. Also, of course, if you're new to the channel, subscribe. I'd love to have you come back to the channel sometime. And, of course, feel free to share the video around, because I am genuinely curious to hear what other people have to say about the topic. I think it's kind of interesting just because of the fact that it's kind of ambiguous right now who the strongest character is, which usually isn't the case for a series like Dragon Ball, but a lot of shonen are going for this kind of ambiguous power scaling route currently, so it's definitely a trend I kind of want to comment on. That being said, I really do appreciate you taking time out of your day to watch this video, and hope you look forward to the content to come in the future, as I have a couple of videos cataloged done by me and Victory, some covering a lot of topics we haven't in a while, because I think something Victory and I enjoy doing, and something you guys enjoy, is the fact that we don't really stick to one thing. I mostly do Dragon Ball stuff by myself, just because it's kind of easy to produce, and it's something I know a lot about, but I'd love to get back to doing more fringe kind of content. We're going to cover Attack on Titan pretty soon. We've already recorded a couple of discussions, I just got to edit those videos. I'm also thinking about talking about Spider-Man, which is something I used to do on Google Plus when that was a thing. But there are definitely some things that I would be interested in talking about on the channel. We actually did a review of No Way Home, I just haven't edited yet, so you guys can feel free to look out for that. And in general, I just kind of want to get back to doing more interesting stuff. I love talking about Dragon Ball, but I can only talk about Dragon Ball so much. I'd love to talk about Hunter x Hunter, but Victory hasn't seen it, so if you guys want to see Victory talk about Hunter x Hunter with me, comment down below that you want to see that so I can pressure him into watching it. Do the same thing for Yu Yu Hakusho, because I would love to talk about that too. I do have a video about Baki versus Toman from Tokyo Revengers that I'm working on. It'll be a little while before I do that, because I'll admit I think the series is pretty entertaining, but I can't remember a lot of the characters' names. So I want to make the video pretty accurate. So I'm gonna spend a little bit more time on that. But you can look forward to that. They'll probably be the second thing I release if I don't release the No Way Home review. But I don't want to drone on. Just know that I am working on a bunch of stuff. It just won't be coming as quickly as I want it to. But I hope I can use that extra time to make the content more enjoyable and more consumable. That way we can get a lot more opinions and a lot more eyes on it. But that being said, anyone who stuck to this point, you're an MVP. And if you did so, comment down below that you're supreme. I'll be curious to see how many people actually made it to this point. Alright, that's been way more than enough of your time taken up with this video. You go on and have a good rest of your day. Be sure to exercise and sleep right. This has been TAF 108 of the Supreme Duo channel. Until we meet again.